Well, class, I welcome you to week 4. Next week is final. It's the final. It's done. And we have 4th of July coming up. So there's several things I want to say. So first of all, many of you were really unhappy with the exam results. Um, and what I have to say to you on this is, fear not, as I've told you. Some of you that scored very low, you will notice you still have A's. I checked for some of you because but I knew this was going to be the case. Now, I didn't want to try to stress you out or use you as guinea pigs for an experiment, but I wanted to point something out to you, especially those of you who are going to go into education and become teachers yourselves. Writing papers all the time about topics is a very labor-intensive type of thing to do. Am I right? So when you write a paper, like my class does demand a lot of work, even when it's not a cram course. A lot of students tell me that they don't have to write this much necessarily in all the other classes. But do you notice that you might be learning more in the process of writing? That you may not memorize all the dates and all the terms, but you get some sort of narrative in your head about these events. Now, when I'm in my upper division in college, multiple choice was barely ever used. And you'll notice that my lectures tie right in with the textbook. I do add certain things from my own perspective, but I'm not far off from the multiple choice. And yet, the way that these exams are set up, many of you were writing to me saying that you were like, you feel like you're doing great in the class, and then all of a sudden these questions popped up, and you just were like confused. What I've found is that that would be the case even if I made up my own multiple choice. Every time I give multiple choice exams, I simply have people who are great test takers with multiple choice, or they're people who just, the things that they focused on happen to be what was focused on in the multiple choice exam, or they do poorly. I myself do poorly in multiple choice exams. And unfortunately, there is this really big push within the kind of education system to put multiple choice questions on students. And I think that this is a false, this is not something they should do. There's some value to it. But ultimately, I think a lot of you felt like you do better with doing the written exams, even though I'm letting you take any one particular exam and doing it over as many times as my history lab let you do it. So what I guess what I wanted to kind of also demonstrate to you is to think about the what kind of education you're getting, and to look at that multiple choice exam and ask if that really reflects upon what you know, and to think about that trend that's going on in education now, and how you should think about your own students if you're to become an educator, and what kind of exams you're going to use, or unfortunately maybe be forced to put on some of your students. Ultimately, I hope what you see is that as I've set up my class, and as you look at the points, I've told you this before, getting a good grade on your exam but not doing the work is not going to be that helpful to you. And if you're doing every week, if you've been doing all the work, this exam didn't hurt you if you were scored low on it. So I just wanted to throw that your way. And if any of you feel that you got demoted on that, and you're frustrated and you have been clearly doing all the work, feel free to hit me up, and maybe I can provide something for you to do. But you should be fine, okay? And The other thing that I wanted to say is, as you look at these assignments, the definitions that I just had you go over, and some of you are turning them in as I speak right now. I want you to know that these are our textbook definitions that will give you a sense of, these terms, but to keep in mind also how these terms get manipulated over time, sometimes just subtly and other times very overtly. Okay, so for example, the largest communist party in the world right now is the Chinese Communist Party. China is officially a communist state. Now, you look at the definition, for communism, and you look what China's doing, and it doesn't mesh up. Most of our goods are made in China by private companies that are allowed to go in capitalist countries, right? Capitalism is thriving in China under the guidance of the Communist Party that is officially against capitalism. So if you stick to this definition to try to help you mentally make a conception of what's going on with China, you will be completely confused, and rightfully so. Here's what I want you to see as what we do with history as historians. We don't take definitions and words for granted. We don't take politicians or what people say at face value to be the truth. You analyze actions and activities with official rhetoric and statements and so forth. China since the 70s has been shifting itself into a capitalist direction while wanting to maintain this kind of veneer of communism. And maybe it's because the state doesn't want to fall apart by trying to redefine itself or change its name, So in a sense, it changes the whole entire idea of what that meaning is. It's often that socialist governments in Europe have helped implement a lot of pro-capitalist things that have hurt socialist institutions, and this has been they've been criticized for this by those within their own party or the more further left of that. Tony Blair was a Labour Party guy who called himself a socialist, and he definitely was much more on the pro-capitalist side. And so again, I'm just trying to remind you that these terms are a helpful framework to understand what's going on in the world, but you should always realize the manipulation of these terms by politicians, for example, because just like a Republican or a Democrat, they know what to say to their constituency. They know what the Republican base wants to hear. The Democrats know what the Democratic base wants to hear. And then sometimes we see that the Democrats and Republicans do the exact opposite by going, yay, they say all these things everybody agrees with, and then they do something else. And so just keep that in mind, as you work with all that. And also keep in mind that there's so many different variables and strands of socialism, communism, anarchism, and views of capitalism and so forth. So I just hope that, you have really embraced conceptually all these terms, and like I told you, you're going to be much wiser for it. These last 2 weeks of what we're studying, you will learn so much about the modern world and what's happened. And again, it's a lot of information, but I hope that you can hang in there and tough out these last 2 weeks and really learn about what's going on, because we live in a volatile world, and it's going to be important for you. Okay, so then, having said that, 4th of July is tomorrow. It's Independence Day. We don't officially have a holiday break in this class, but I hope that you can get some time to spend with your family and friends and enjoy the festivities. Now, in the middle of all this, what I wanted to say as well is that, for me as a person who teaches history, U.S., Western, and world, I look at a day like Independence Day, and I enjoy it, but I also notice a lot of myths that American nationalism conjures up on a day like 4th of July. And I think about how we imagine our own history and past. And to be honest, many of our ideas about ourselves and what this day means are completely delusional in many ways. Now, I'm not attacking our legacy of independence, nor our pride in that. But I am simply saying that if you look, every nation state, and this is something that every nation state does, they create myths to unify people to have some sort of strong sense of pride in their nation. That's what nationalism does. But we historians, we have been usually used to kind of be the propagandist of nationalists, the official propagandist, or we are their worst enemy. And so we are rather bought or we are fought. And I want to say that I value this idea of attacking the status quo. When you have a narrative like an empire that you don't think is legitimate, that we make a stand against that. Now, I'm not going to go on and tell you this whole list of these myths and narratives. What I was simply saying is that it's subtle, but you should explore that. Feel free to call me up if you want to talk about some of the things. What I'm going to show you, though, is I'm going to post with with this a documentary clip, not documentary, an interview with a conservative Scottish historian and economist, Neil Ferguson. I don't agree necessarily with a lot of his perspectives. First of all, he is Scottish. He speaks as a British person, but and a British conservative is different than an American conservative. But he gives advice to U.S. politicians. I believe I've watched him in interviews talking about giving advice to McCain. He's a very intelligent man, and he can be provocative. I do think in this case, when he's asked the question if the U.S. is itself an empire, what he has to say kind of cracks open some of these foundation myths that we have. And he puts things into perspective that is a little bit jarring, I think, to our sensibilities, but I think it's good for us to reflect upon. So I'm going to post that with this video, and I hope that you enjoy it to the point of actually bringing up some of the points at your 4th of July barbecue to just see, how willing and thoughtful your crowd can be. And if the beers start, pouring and people start getting a little bit rowdy, maybe you want to slow down a little bit on that. But in any case, I hope you have a great, fun holiday, and don't take for granted being independent nationally, nor independent of thought. And have a great week.